How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another installment of Tech Support Thursday. Yes, I know it is Friday in the evening by the time this video is released to YouTube, but I tried getting it done yesterday and I wasn't able to make it happen. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time today going through TST and Ticket 32. I'm trying to make this more consistent and all the good stuff that goes along with it. So I'm going to start from actually last week's video. There were some, well, those are comments that I put in there. So not really that important. So let me go ahead and begin going through this and we'll go from there. So, hello, are you planning on SRv6 sessions? It seems to be picking up a bit of adoption speed, not too easy to understand. Thank you. I don't have any plans to do any segment routing version 6, at least right now. I don't work with it at all. None of the customers I support are running segment routing, so for me it's more or less a... Sorry. Phone was ringing. So there's really I might in the future, depends on more of the goals or aspirations if I come across it and it's relatively easy to dig into. But the reality of it is I really don't see myself spending any time digging into that type of stuff. So right now, the only thing that I see myself doing in the very near future, I have one certification that I want to go take. I want to go take the newest NSX, the network virtualization VCP, so that I get my VCIX and network virtualization. I still haven't gotten that done yet, but that's the one thing I plan on going out and getting, hopefully soon. But beyond that, that's pretty much it. So, beyond that, maybe down the road if I decide to go do that, but it's one of those things where right now I am not spending a whole lot of time doing any real training other than stuff that I think might be beneficial to the channel or to the masses. So I want to get the biggest bang for my impact, meaning I'm not going to do something super specific like SRv6 where only, say, 15 people might actually watch the video, and you put a lot of time and effort into learning a particular topic and labbing it up to make sure that you understand how it works and going through all that just to have a very small subset of people actually use it. I mean, it'd probably be faster for someone to read the documentation and lab it up in CML or Eve than it would be for me to put the time and effort in for it. I would, if I'm going to put my time and effort into anything, it's going to be CCNA, CCNP, stuff that the majority of people are going to go after and go down that route. And then, because at the end of the day, I'm going to get a much better, it's going to have a wider audience and a much better reach than something very specific. So, that's the direction I see myself going with training down the road. Maybe at some point I will sprinkle in other things, but I don't know why it's taking me so long to eventually circle back. Well, actually, I can't, and I'll be completely honest with you. It's been a lot of the servers in my basement and a lot of the hardware that I've got for ESXi and for Eve were a lot of the time dedicated to customer environments. So I didn't really have, like, there were one customer that I was solely focused on was they had a very large environment, and I was the lead network resource for that particular customer, and so I had anywhere between 5 and 6 projects with them. One customer, 5 or 6 projects at any given point in time that I was actively working through with them. So I was constantly labbing something up. So a lot of the times, the reason why I couldn't dedicate a server or time or resources to test something out was because I needed to put that resource, the server, to use to be a lab development server for the customers that I was working on. So it's just par for the course. So that's kind of the reason why I know none of the viewers or subscribers have ever really asked, well, why don't you put a lot of content out anymore? Um, well, namely for the fact that it's, a lot of the servers that I had were had were dedicated to a particular customer, or I was spinning something up or spinning something down for a customer deployment that I had to go through and demo this or demo that. So just, and I'm being a consultant, I'm fairly busy on a regular basis. It wasn't uncommon for me to have, 12 projects going on at any one given time. You're doing a couple different things with a couple different customers, and, if you've got multiple efforts at the same time, I mean, 12 would be a very, very busy period of time. On average, it was 8 to 10 different projects going on at any given time. And spending a lot of time in a lab, delivering solutions. That's what my job was to do. So, it's I'm hoping to change that in the near future, but we'll see what happens. So another question was, did you fix the DNS for ESXi host 2 in the future, changing it from .13 to .12 as per the diagram? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I did go update it, and I had to go flush DNS from vCenter. I think that's why I couldn't get it in to vCenter. But yes, I believe I did get that fixed. I'm planning on doing an update I'll be doing some training, a full walkthrough of 3.2, and then going to an upgrade of 4.x, hopefully, and sometime in the near future, because it seems to be something that a lot of people are starting to use, but I'm not sure exactly to what level we'll actually be going through. So, but I do want to cover NSXT because even though it is one of those technologies that is kind of niche, not a lot of customers are running it. It's one of those things where I don't see a lot of good training for it online. At least nobody that has any real world experience with it. I see a lot of the really good content is usually very, very little, and so I'd want to go through and lab it up appropriately and stuff like that. So. Hi Rob, thank you for your video. Can I get your NSXT design OneNote as a copy? Those notes are quite good. This will be helpful for me. Yeah, he's talking about the. I pulled up in OneNote. I had all the notes that I had written down about all that type of stuff. Yeah, I could probably get them out to the world. I had to think of a good way of doing that other than like Google Drive. Maybe that'd be the direction I would go with it. I don't know. I'll figure something out. Another comment was, "Hi Rob, if you I feel it is a very popular question in your channel, but could you please tell us on what system hardware you are working on right now, like the processor RAM of if you are using a server for the lab, because working with a 12-thread or 16-thread processor won't make these DC labs happen, I guess. Please make a video or comment here if possible. Thanks." So I did comment, and I responded to it. I said, for Eve, I have 4x10 core E740, A70 Xeon Procs with 250 and 500 gigs of RAM. And then for ESXi, 2x22 core Xeon Gold 6152 Procs with 384 gigs of RAM. So that's 3 of the 4 servers that I have. There was actually a 4th server that I was running that I was doing Eve Community on, and it's a Cisco C220 with 250 gigs of RAM. Not quite. It's an Eve. I forgot. I had to go log into the server or connect to the KVM to see what the actual specs are. But that server's shut down at the moment. So the way I was doing, so the servers I'm talking about right here, the 4x10 core, these are the Dell RA10s. So they're 2U? Yeah, they're 2U. They're about yay tall. So, and they have four 10 core processors at 2.2 gigahertz, I think. So it's like 90 ish gigahertz of compute. And so it was never, I don't think RAM was ever really a problem with that server per se. And I was able to run a lot of Nexus, which is usually a pretty beefy platform to run. So that's what I did there. Um, Now on the so I and I'm a big for I'm gonna say the last 2 years ish maybe. I don't remember exactly how long it's been. I've stopped deploying Eve as a VM inside of ESXi, and I don't. So just my humble opinion here, and don't take this the wrong way if you disagree. Um, I never saw any. I could never get very large topologies to work inside of the EVM if I was running Nexus. And the irony of it is, Nexus is the platform that I work with the most. So for me, doing anything with routers, whether it's iOS XE, the ASR 1000 platform, any of the newer Catalyst switches that run iOS XE, whether you're talking 16 or 17 code, or Catalyst 9K or Catalyst 8K, it really didn't matter to me because the problem that I was running into it was I'm focused data center, right? So a lot of Nexus in the data center. It's a data center class switch. So in those situations, I would definitely be I got far better results with larger labs that were stable deploying Eve bare metal directly at the hardware level. So Eve is the hypervisor. So for lack of a better word, it was able to take advantage of the underlying hardware much more effectively than doing nested virtualization or running VMs inside of a VM. It just worked so much better. And if you I know there's been some comments in the past where Eve support has said that it's negligible on this or whatever the case might be or whatever the comment was made. And I don't remember exactly who made it. If you're getting different, having a different experience with it, more power to you. I'm happy for you. But and with the size of the environments that I was working on and the involvement of the labs that I needed to work on, it definitely to me made more sense to go bare metal and install Eve directly to the hardware, it being the hypervisor. And even though technically Eve isn't a hypervisor, it's a it can you can deploy VMs on it. But the cool thing about it is, even though it's not technically considered a hypervisor, it allowed me to run multiple VMs inside of it as if I was running inside of ESXi and running multiple individual VMs. So it was able to share the resources of the box and allow me to do what I needed to do. So I was able to run 25, 30 Nexus 9K Vs without running into any problems. Quickie, it was the CLI was always snappy. It was quick. It was responsive. I could get debugs to work. I didn't have to worry about the boxes rebooting themselves. Every once in a while, I'd get a reboot here or there, depending on the situation. But at the end of the day, for me, it did the job that I needed to do. And I had two servers that were running like that 24 hours a day. Because I was consistently having to work on customer projects and things like that. So, because it was delivery for me, it made the most sense to go that direction. So now the other ESXi server that I've got is the Cisco UCS C240M5. It's got two 22 core gold procs. The reason why I did that is I went to VMware's website and I went to the hardware compatibility list and I plugged in, okay, I want to run ESXi 8. What vendor hardware, Cisco, HP, Dell, whoever, what hardware has been tested that this will work on, guaranteed. And Cisco UCS C240M5 with Gold 6152 or 6100 processors was the response that I got back. So all I did was I went to eBay with those specs and I started researching capabilities. And it took probably a week or two because I couldn't find anything that was in my price range. I was getting $5,000 and $10,000, and that was way more than I was willing to spend on a new server. but I wanted to future-proof myself for ESXi 8, and then give myself the ability of testing an NSX 4 and things like that. So, and I didn't want to go too cheap with, like, say, let's see, bronze, silver. I think there might even be a platinum, but um, the newer versions of Xeon Gold, it's like, okay, I went with Gold 6152, which actually is kind of funny. Some of the customer environments that I do support, I am running newer processors than production equipment in some of these customers' environments. So that to me told me I went down the right direction. So as I see production environments every day, and I'm able to look at their processors and go, oh, okay, well they're running a slightly older version of Gold than I am, or 6132 versus 6152, stuff like that. So that was the driver for that. Now, I know, and so this person responded, it says, that's great specs. Show the video where you guide us through how to choose the server and the things we need to keep in mind before considering to buy. That was really helpful. Here in India, the shipping cost is way too high from eBay. I have to look for some alternatives. Congratulations for passing the exam. Keep inspiring the community and great work by you. Thanks. You're welcome. Thank you for the acknowledgement. So that is the reason why I went the direction that I did. I wanted to get ESXi 8 support. I wanted to be able to run NSX 4 and all the cool things that go along with that. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm probably going to be much more picky in the future about how I buy servers. I won't just be, oh, there's lots of RAM and here's a CPU. I'm going to like figure out, okay, how do I future proof myself? But at the end of the day, that's the direction. So I still have the servers to play around with them and stuff like that, but it's going to be more a direction of we'll see what the need is. But like I said, I'm really only going to need hardware to run a CCNA lab to go through all the CCNA topics, and then eventually I'll flip over. We'll do CCNP. Like I said, I'm still working on that. I've just been kind of crazy the last few days with trying to get some stuff done for work, and I haven't really had the time. Plus, it's still pretty nice outside, so I'm still trying to enjoy the weather. It's still shorts weather here where I live, so I can still go outside and enjoy the weather. That probably won't stop until the end of September. So my goal is I'm trying to get some initial stuff done while it's in the evening or on the weekend when I have some downtime and I don't want to be outside or whatever the case might be. Eventually, I'll circle back once it starts to get cold out again. I won't be outside as much, so therefore I will be spending more time in the house. And doing that, my goal is to produce content that is going to be much more favorable to the community than what it is that I want to produce. For example, NSX or whatever the case might be. So at the end of the day, I'm still an infrastructure guy. I still focus heavily on that as a forward-looking way of doing things. So that'll never change. I'm still going to always be like infrastructure thought process because that's what it is. That's kind of how I've been trained. So, but as time goes on, maybe that'll morph. Maybe there'll be people who'll be like, hey, we'd love to see this or we'd love to see that. One thing that I actually do really want to start doing more of, and I'm hoping that some folks will be interested in learning about it, is design. Spending more time walking through how do you talk to a customer and do the thing more strategy. Instead of being very tactical and thinking to myself, okay, they want to do XYZ. Well, let's say, for example, they want to deploy a VXLAN fabric. Okay, how many different ways can we do that? Well, there's manual, there's DCNM, there's Nexus dashboard. You can do it through ACI if you want to. So there's multiple ways of moving through that process, but at the same point in time, there's also a heavy piece of that where it's like, okay, what are the things needed in order for that to happen, right? What are the tactical things you need to accomplish from a technical perspective? I hate to use the term tactical, or whatever, but there are What are the moving pieces that need to be executed on in order for that to happen? Well, that's one thing, but how do you go from high level design? So, for example, on a regular basis, I talk to customers. I'm brought in for assessments a lot of the times, and because of the fact that I see networking a certain way, and I can visualize things into the customer's environment, the way they've got stuff going on today, and then I can see, okay, they've got X amount of equipment. This is how it's currently cabled. This is how what the architecture looks like to me. This is how it's configured. What are they doing operationally? So I can look at config wise. Okay, they got a lot of layer 2 here. They got a lot of layer 3 here. Here's all the internet routes. Here's their firewalls. I can look at all of the moving pieces of their network. I can assess how it's operating based off the configuration and the data flows. And then once I understand that, then I can go through and once I take the layer 1 and layer 2 pieces and I understand who's connected to who and how, I understand how trunking works and where the VLANs sit, then on top of that, I can overlay layer 3 routing. And over the top of that, I can get a general idea of, okay, this is how this traffic flows for this, or this traffic flows for that. I can get an idea of how the network traffic flows through the network and stuff like that. Once I have a solid grasp on what they've got going on, and a lot of the guys that I work with will tell you that you have to know the network better than the customer knows their network in a lot of different regards, because as a consultant or as a partner, your job a lot of times is initially will be advisory, like what should we do. So you'll have to maybe there's 4 different ways for you to get something to work, right? So there's 4 different ways, but I think only 2 really make sense, but I really want to go with this one because this is the best way that we go about it with every other customer. This is based off where you're trying to go, this makes the most sense. You also have to take into consideration who the customer is. Right? Do they have the technical capability of taking over once you're done deploying? Because you don't want to bring a solution to the table that is way more complicated. It gets the job done, right? It gets the job done, but at the same point in time, the customer will then always be reliant on you. When they need to make a change, they're always going to have to reach out to you in order to get something done. So that might work with some customers, that doesn't work for others. So I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split. So some customers have the technical capability, they have the resources on staff to do that type of stuff. Actually, I'd say it's more 60-40. I'd say 40% have it, as long as you bring them all of the information they need in order for that to work, and then you do a solid knowledge transfer. And a lot of times, the customer will inevitably circle back at a later point in time, and they will check with you to see, hey, did we do this right? Because I hate glorifying myself as somebody special, but I am a subject matter expert when it comes to networking. So I've spent over a decade learning this stuff. So a lot of the things that I'm familiar with, customers will reach out to me and be like, hey, can we do this? And it's one of those things where they're asking me how to approach this, or did I do this right? I'm getting a weird output from this, and then it's my job to respond based off that information, what it is that I think, what's my opinion on the situation. So when I have to be able to articulate that, and I'd say probably 60 to 70% of the time I'm talking to the engineer, or I'm talking to my peer at their company. And that's usually how it goes. I'd say the other maybe 20, 30, and very rarely do I ever go to CTO level. But like, for example, I'll talk to manager and director on a semi-regular basis. I'll have somebody that is way above them, 1 or 2 pay grades or organizational structure higher than them. And then I will have to articulate the same thing to that person, because the engineer hears it and they're like, okay, great, I just need to get, like, would you do me a solid, and would you be willing to get on a call with my boss and my boss's boss? I'm like, sure, set it up. So, and then I'll have to, and when you start going from, because when you're talking to the engineer, you're talking very tactical, and you're also talking very technical. You're trying to help them understand what's going to be going on from the technical perspective. And then you have the tactical piece where you're going to be talking about what you're going to be doing where you're going to be doing it. And then you combine those two in order to come up with both a design and a deployment walkthrough method of procedures, is what I like to refer to as, or a MOP. And you put that in front of them. That is usually the information. I will take that, and it's higher level, right? It doesn't go into the nitty gritty details unless it has to. But a lot of times we'll take that information, and if I have to talk to a manager or a director, sure, I'll have that conversation, but I won't get super technical. I won't say, we're going to enable OSPF here, we're going to configure BGP there, we're going to redistribute between the two, but we're going to use prefix lists that are matching on these subnets from here and these subnets from there, and route maps that are going to call those prefix lists to help control the redistribution. I don't get into that level of detail. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to have two different routing protocols, OSPF and BGP. There's going to be mutual redistribution to help with route propagation. We're going to put some controls in place to make sure that we don't have routes going where they don't belong, or route feedback. We're going to take care of those things before they happen. And you come off as if you own that network. It's your network. Even though it's not, you come off as if you do. And there's an era of confidence. I don't want to say arrogance, because arrogance is the wrong term. You got to come off like you know what you're talking about. So that's where that really comes into play. So being able to talk to that level is it's kind of a developed skill, if you will. But the longer you spend in the industry, and really the key thing is, if you know all the work moving pieces to that, right? You're the one that came up with the plan of attack. You're the one that came up with the steps in order to implement. You know what to do, where to do it, why you're doing it, what the backup plan is. If you know all those pieces, right, you own that project, right? The cool thing about it is, just by knowing all that information, you come off as if you own it. And then you're able to talk to whoever it is you want. And then here's the funny part about it is, I've learned this over a long time, is the higher you go up inside the chain of command, from like manager to maybe director to VP, maybe to CTO or senior VP, and then you get to CTO, maybe CIO. When you're getting 4 and 5 levels above engineer, and you're talking to, and you're an engineer yourself, when you're talking at that level, they don't give two craps what configuration command you're going to use. They just want to know, like, budget-wise, what's this going to cost us? What's the level of effort? They're so far removed from the actual implementation. They might be on the call when it's happening, or they might get an email alert and they might check it the next morning. But they are so far removed that you have to take that into consideration. You need to remove that much more information, technical and specific information, from your briefing to them or your explanation to them, that they're getting just the cliff notes, right? The way I like to tell younger engineers or junior engineers to myself is, pretend like you have to brief the president on a particular topic, or the CEO of a company on a particular topic, and you have 5 minutes to do it. How much information can you whittle down to do this? And if they have questions, you answer those as specifically as you can. Like, yeah, is that clear? I like to joke around, like, clear as mud, and I'll give like a cheesy smile every once in a while. It's like, but they know if I say clear as mud, so kind of brackish water. Any questions? I don't do that when I don't know the person, right? You don't just kind of crack a joke or try to be funny when you're, depending on the tone, right? You can kind of gauge the tone too. Sometimes you can. But I did that the other day I was talking to a senior director for something, and I was like, does that make sense to you? And I said it exactly like this. Does that make sense to you? And he goes, yeah, sort of. I said, well, okay, what can I clarify for you? And where can I make it more clear? And what doesn't make sense? And then you start honing in on that thing, and you're like, well, this piece over here. Oh, sure. Anything specific about it? And they dig into whatever it was, and it happened to be like, why do you need to, going back to the OSPF to BGP redistribution thing, why do you need to control that? Why? I don't understand. Well, simple. Because we have 2 different entry points for redistribution, one on this device, one on this device. You might have a route learned on this one that can go back into the network somewhere over here and then make its way back over to this box. And if you're redistributing by accident over here, the same route you're redistributing over here, you can get route feedback and create a loop. I was like, we don't want to do that. We don't want your GPS to get screwed up and send you down the wrong path because it couldn't, figure out where you were, well, what street you were on. We want to make sure we keep you on the right track all the time. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. That's why we do that. We just don't want to have any problems in the network because it's like the last thing we want to do is create a problem, that we can't fix. So we have those type of things, and and he's just like, gotcha. Okay, cool. So I was like, clear as mud, and he yeah, clear as mud. So it's as soon as we did that, I for that 1 minute to try to answer his question, I put my engineer hat on. And then as soon as he was done, he didn't have any more questions. The engineer hat came off, architect hat went back on, and I was like, okay, cool. That is what we were planning on doing. Does anybody else have any other questions that I can answer for you? And I was like, and I'll get as technical as you want me to. But you put it in their shoes, or you put it back to them, so that you can, based off the question. And every once in a while, somebody will ask a question. Hey, I don't get this, or I might have to ask them, okay, where exactly are you confused? Because the more information, the better I understand their question, the better I can answer it. So if I'm not exactly sure how to answer their question, I can go, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I got you, and yeah, no worries, I got you. You always act as if you've got them, whether you do or you don't. So that's pretty much how I've always gone about doing it. And but I will joke internally, I'm not a sales guy. I'm really not. I'm an engineer. But because I know a lot about engineering and I know a lot about technology, it allows me to talk like a sales guy. So let me actually circle back a little bit and talk more about the long-term stuff with design, because you have this interesting aspect of things to take into consideration. One of those is, what is the outcome? So I have a customer that I'm working with right now that I did an assessment a few months ago, and the assessment went really well. They were really happy with the outcome, and now we're moving towards, hey, we've got this bill of material. We had so and so company. We gave them all of the hardware that we've got today, and we told them to give us a quote for everything in our environment. Okay, good, cool. The quote comes back, and it's well over $1 million for all the hardware. And so I started filtering through it to try to understand what's going on. And as soon as I looked at the information that I had gotten from back with the bill of material, and I started looking at their network diagram, I knew exactly where they were starting to line things up. They did basically a hardware for hardware replacement. So, and that there's nothing wrong with doing a hardware for hardware replacement. Meaning, I'll give you a perfect example. Customer has legacy Nexus 5Ks deployed in one of their data centers in a core distribution access type of architecture. Not something I would recommend for a data center. Well, they want the upgrade because of the platforms that they're using. They wanted to upgrade to a Nexus 9K that would have the exact same port density. So literally the idea would be to take the new Nexus 9K, install it into an open to use on that same rack that switches inside of today, power that sucker on, take the configuration from the 5K, if I need to, retrofit it at all if I can to the 9K, dump that config onto the 9K, and then when I've got a maintenance window that I've been approved to do, all I have to do is move cables. That's it. Move cables. Simple migration. Very, very easy to do. And then I do that for all the switches. So is there some small downtime? Yes, there is, because now the MAC addresses are going to be changing on any of the logical interfaces, whether it's physical or it's logical like a VLAN or a loopback, like an SVI, something like that. Or the physical interface, the MAC address changes. The IP stays the same, but the MAC address changes. So you're going to have OSPF or EIGRP or BGP go down because ARP isn't resolving. ARP's got to get updated, flushed, all that good stuff. And then you bring it up on the new switch, and you do that per switch. And it takes, let's say it takes you 10 minutes per switch to move all the cables. Then you go over to the next switch, and you do the exact same thing. And you go through all the switches. That's a hardware for hardware replacement. That isn't always what you need to do. Now, that particular part of the migration is done after somebody with architecture experience has looked at the environment and done the assessment. I do assessments. So I will look at what they've got going on today and I'll say, okay, well, I don't recommend that. I really don't. I recommend we go this direction instead. Let's not do what you've got going on today. Let's move you to, say, a spine leaf environment where we've got this installed instead. We configure things this way. And then we do the migration a different way. The routing will still work the way you expect it to from a layer 3 perspective. If you've got anything layer 2, we'll just run those cables where they got to go. Whop, bam, boom. We'll be in good shape. So we're probably going to, because the idea is to get them to a place where they aren't going to be tied to an architecture. So, and what I mean by that is, if somebody's already got a core distribution access type of design in their environment, and all you do is a newer model switch replacement, in some environments that's fine, like a branch office at a bank, no problem. It's a great way to go about doing it because there's nothing really going to go on at the bank branch. One or two switches. You put in a newer model. 3 or 4 years newer. You move the cables over. Whop, bam, boom. You're done. It takes like 20 minutes for the migration. Easy peasy. However, in a data center, if you're doing core distribution access, it actually probably makes more sense to go to a spine leaf environment, whether or not you use VXLAN. I would recommend VXLAN because it gives you flexibility. It's layer 2 stretches between all of the switches, and then if you want to do layer 3, it's a horse apiece. You throw some VRF light connections to your routed connections, and Bob's your uncle. It makes it very, very easy to migrate to. So, and it gives you flexibility. You can plug that server in anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the same switch rack. You can add more servers over here, plug them into the switches, and guess what? Through the beauty of encapsulated tunnels and overlays, all the switches know about all the other traffic, and then they're just VXLAN encapsulated to each other. Everybody's happy. Layer 2 works the way you would expect it to. The beauty of IP networking, right? So that is a lot of times what we recommend doing, and that's the direction I will go. I want to make the customer's environment easier to work with. The technology we're deploying might be a little more complicated, but that's my job as the engineer and the architect to educate said customer on said technologies to help them understand what's going on. So now there is a small portion of the time, and I won't even give you a range on the percentage, where what will end up happening is I will end up, because the customer doesn't have the technical capacity or the technical doesn't have the technical depth on the engineering team that they have on the customer side, we'll be like, okay, well, we can still implement this. They might not be comfortable with it. Like, that's fine. We can help you out with that. We can say, you know what, we can give you every quarter, every 90 days, we can give you, say, 20 hours of billable time that you can reach out to us for anything you need us to handle. We'll set up VPN access to the engineer, or if there's something you need to do in that particular network, part of the network, you can reach out to us. We can work with the engineer, figure out what's going on, set up an hour or two remote session, whether it's Teams, WebEx, Zoom, whatever makes you happy. The engineer can log in, make whatever changes that they need to make, and then, voila, you're off to the races. And we'll put an engineer on that project that understands the technology, And I've done that multiple times. I have several customers that do that on a regular basis. It's not uncommon for me to have 8 to 16 hours a week where I'm doing ad hoc work, just because of the fact that I've got multiple skill sets across the board that I'm comfortable working with. So that's where knowing how the technology works is very, very valuable to you as the engineer. But knowing that I can throw that option at the customer gives them a lot of it gives them a sense of ease where they don't have to worry about it. Puts them at ease, and like, you don't have to worry about that. It's going to cost you a little bit, in the long run, operationally, to have a bucket of, it's more of a capex, but that's a capex expense. Let's say it's $5,000. Well, $5,000 a quarter. You come back to us on a time and materials (T&M) type of agreement where, and whenever that 10 hours or 20 hours is exhausted, then you just go spend another $10,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is on another bucket of hours, and then when that one has been exhausted, you move on. So it gives them they're usually very comfortable with that, because now they don't have to go out and hire somebody for, say, $100,000 or $80,000 or whatever amount of dollars it is, have that person get trained up for, say, 90 days on that environment, plus whatever else they got going on, because they're not solely going to be working on that particular thing for 2 hours a week for the next 90 days. It's just, or for the remainder of their career. That doesn't make any sense. Instead of having to go hire somebody, and you might not even have the ability to train whoever your people are, you have a consulting service that has the engineers readily available to make those changes on the environment. That really speaks volumes to most customers. They like that ability to bring in somebody third party and make the changes as they need to. And a lot of times you'll find, and I've done this multiple times, where the customer ends up liking the engineer. I've got multiple customers that have asked for me by name and be like, I really want Rob to work on this. Like, okay, cool. I already know the environment because I've worked on it. So let me hop in there and make whatever changes I need to make. And I work with the manager or director or whoever it is to get something done. Happens on a regular basis. So that is the... I didn't mean to like get hung up on this one, but I wanted to kind of talk about it. The drivers behind that type of stuff, because that stuff's really important when you start getting into those conversations and how you have them. The other comment here was, Rob, thanks for all the honest content you've provided. You are welcome, sir. And then last but certainly not least, hello. I'm starting my apprenticeship at Palo Alto Networks now. I have a few questions. Is it possible to start with PCNSE, the Palo Alto Certified Network Security Engineer? Yes, I already have a few years of experience with network security and CCNA certifications. Or would it be better to start with PCNSA? What are the main differences? I did respond, but as far as I know it, I think you have to have the PCNSA before you can get your PCNSE. Don't quote me on that. I think, but so there's a big difference between the PCNSA and the PCNSE. The A is administrator. The E is engineer. The A means that you can log into a Palo firewall and make some changes to it and keep it operational day to day. A single Palo firewall. Now, Palo has a management platform called Panorama, and a lot of times you'll take your Palo firewalls, you'll register them to Panorama, you'll work with templates and device groups, DGs, and you will make all of your changes within inside of Panorama. So if you make a firewall change, if you make a routing change, whatever it is, firewall policy, whatever, you'll configure that in Panorama, then you can save it to Panorama, and then you push it to the device. So Panorama will push the config to the device will inherit that config, and you'll be in good shape. So PCNSE is a heavy dose of Panorama. So PCNSA, if you're going to manage a single firewall, E, if you're planning on managing multiple firewalls from the management platform Panorama. That is my understanding from Palo engineers that I work with. It's very rare for us to ever have to log into a Palo firewall directly unless there's something we need to look at directly on it. But I think everybody that I work with that deals with Palo is an E anyway. So they know Panorama. They work with it on a regular basis. I do not spend much time inside of it, so I don't know the intricate workings, but I know Palo as a firewall platform. So there's that. I know this is kind of a longer one, and I want to kind of a little bit of a rant, but I wanted to give you guys some examples as to what I meant and that type of stuff. So if you guys have any questions or comments or questions or anything like that you would like to make mention of, please leave a comment in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you in the next video. Have a good one, guys.